Let's be honest, there are many unknowns in Genshin Impact, like the Tsaritsa, the Harbingers, the Abyss Order, the Ainslev, the Sinners, the Hexen Circle, the Primordial One, the Heavenly Principles, the Shades... But we've been given some crowns to work with, so we have theories about them. When it comes to Paimon instead, we got nothing at all, and yet she's probably the most important character in the game, even more than Aether and Lumine, considering the Hoyoverse immediately moved the voice actress to a different studio so that Paimon would always have a voice. So today we will be going through everything we know about Paimon, every hint we've been given, every weird occurrence that makes Paimon Susmon. But first, this is a theory video and leaks are prohibited in the comment section. I will use information available in the game, but my theories and conclusions are not to be considered the official lore of the game, unless I got something right and it's confirmed in a later update of the game itself. That being said, I will present to you the evidence I've gathered while trying not to give you a personal opinion about it, and only at the end of the video will I share my theory. Well then, how about we explore the video ahead of us right now? Exhibit 1. Paimon's appearance. Paimon is... I honestly don't know how to categorize her, because in the entirety of Teyvat, as far as we explored at least, we haven't found anything that even remotely looks like her, although we can safely assume that she was created to look like one of the elf from ShadowXImpact, the autonomous humanoids like Klein or Bukafushi. She looks like a child that can fly, although it takes effort for her to float like she does, and she can also disappear whenever she wants to, an ability Rosaria talked about. Paimon has white hair with a black star accessory, and her eyes look like a starry night. She wears a white short onesie with bronze decorations, on which there's an upside down triquetra with a dot in the middle and 3 lines underneath that kinda look like a face. There are also 2 identical bronze symbols on the sides that somehow look like a mask version of Paimon's face, and underneath 2 silver outlined symbols that I can only describe as a screaming ghost face. Both on the cuffs and on the shorts there are big bronze decorations that look like acanthus leaves like those on Corinthian columns. She has some fabric on her wrists, but no decorations on her back. She wears something like a dark blue scarf that for some reason reminds me of a Hydra Abyss mage, and a mantle that shows something like a cosmos with moving stars, but also some peculiar symbols, some looking like simple constellations, while the bigger ones look like these branches of Irminsul. On her legs there are 2 bronze decorations that kinda look like small shields. Her right leg has a long white sock, while the left one has a white thing on the outer side. She wears white boots with bronze tips, heels, and the same acanthus leaves decorations on her onesie. In 5.0 we saw that Paimon can actually remove those clothes, since we saw her in the hot springs with her hair tied up in 2 ponytails, a white swim dress, and a piece of fabric of the same color of a scarf tied around her wrist. What she didn't take off was the star-shaped hair accessory and her crown, which needs a chapter on its own. Exhibit 2. Paimon's crown. This crown levitates above her head like a halo, and to the front there's a very weird unknown long symbol we need to analyze because there's something I want to show you. From the top what we see is a rocket looking shape, then something that looks like wings, then some weird legs, and then another rocket looking shape but upside down. The symbol doesn't really look like anything we've seen before, but what we've seen many times before are those decorations that look like acanthus leaves, because they are on the statues of the 7. So I went to the animal statue in Windrise because it was the closest statue to where I was, and I noticed something very interesting. Not only are the different sizes and number of leaves on her shorts the same as those on the pedestal of the statues, but the animal statue also looks very similar to the symbol on her crown, only very stylized. Venti's head covered by a hood looks like the rocket shape. The position of Venti's wings is very similar to the wings on Paimon's crown, then the statue's ring resembles Paimon's halo, and it's also in the same position. The acanthus leaves that point toward the ground look like the things that I define as legs on Paimon's crown, and then there's the pedestal with the other acanthus leaves pointing upwards that resemble the inverted rocket shape on the crown. Why does that symbol look like Venti's statue? I leave it up to you for now, but we're definitely coming back to Venti in another chapter of the video. Exhibit 3, Paimon's Role. We don't know exactly when or where the traveler was released after being caught by Sasti, but we know he traveled for at least a few months, somehow avoiding any kind of city or settlement or even people in general, until he literally fished Paimon out of the water, saving her because she apparently can swim. How did she end up in the water where she can fly over it? Let's just not go there. Anyway, although the game begins near Starfell Lake, the place we were shown where Paimon was drowning is actually Guyon Stone Forest. And again, how did they travel for 2 months together from Liyue to Mondstadt while avoiding any kind of civilization along the way? Still, because he saved her from drowning, Paimon decided to become his guide through Tevat to help him find his sister, and she used those 2 months to teach the traveler the language used in Tevat. But as soon as he finally told her his backstory and his meeting with the Sustainer, she proposed the idea of meeting the Archons to see if one of them was the unknown god or if they knew anything about her. As if that was the most natural and easiest thing in the world. Anyway, Paimon's role is essentially the traveler's guide. She's supposed to tell him everything about the nation they're gonna visit, but she's not really good at it. I mean, she basically knows less than what's common knowledge. She didn't know that Rex Lapis only appeared once a year during the Rite of Ascension, she can't remember the name of the Raiden Shogun, she had never heard the name Lesser Lord Kusanali before, nor that knowledge was a resource in Sumeru. She didn't know whether the Hydra Archon judged people personally, nor that there was a Chief Justice, and when we got to Fontaine, we realized like immediately that Furina is a worldwide renowned celebrity, and yet Paimon didn't know her at all. When we got to Natlan, she also didn't know that the Pyro Archons are humans, despite the fact that people go to Natlan on vacation all the time, so it's not even a secret. And lastly, she never said a word about the Tsaritsa. On the other hand, she does know quite a lot about Mondstadt and the Anemo Archon. I mean, that's basically the only time she actually acted like a real guide. Apart from that, Paimon is the one who interacts the most with the people we meet along the way, and sometimes she even replies in our stead. Interestingly, she speaks of herself in third person, which isn't necessarily something unique. This happens a lot in anime, for example. But sometimes, doesn't it sound like she's actually talking about or asking things for someone else named Paimon? Exhibit 4, Wrath of the Gods. This was one of the first things that I could never really explain, even though we could technically justify it if we try hard enough. Back in Inazuma, we ended up exploring the Delusion Factory that the Fatui used to provide the resistance with delusions in order to fight against the Shogunate, and in the end we met Scaramouche in a room filled with purple smoke, the wrath of the gods, or better yet, the remains of a dead god that the Fatui used to manufacture those delusions. We talked for quite some time with Scaramouche, and because we stayed there for too long, the traveler was affected by the smoke, which feeds on anger, and he fainted. Ignoring the fact that the traveler has always been immune to basically everything that normal people would consider lethal, like, you know, the Abyss, but got taken down by the remains of a dead god, Paimon was completely fine, even though she was also angry because of Scaramouche's words, just like the traveler, since both of them witnessed Teppei's death because of a delusion. She didn't faint, she didn't even flinch a little bit, while the traveler completely lost consciousness. If that's not suspicious enough, soon I'll present another exhibit featuring Scaramouche. Exhibit 5, Dendro. Sumeru was the nation where things started getting really suspicious, but also where I started doubting Paimon pretty hard. During the Sub-Zero's festival, we met Nahida, and with a knowledge capsule, she gave us the memories of the previous festivals we've experienced, and Nahida said something pretty interesting.
Your sense of deja vu is stronger than everyone else's, yes? As for an explanation, you two received the blessing of Dendro, and you also have special, sensitive constitutions.
In the following Samsara, Nahida also said,
I told you that you two are special.
And way later, she said,
Only after receiving the blessing of Dendro can a person gain the Dendro element's dream-enhancing power. That explains the feelings of déjà vu.
As far as we know, the Traveler was the only one who received Dendro from the Statue of the Seven, so while what Nahida makes sense for him, it is very weird that the same applies to Paimon. So the obvious questions would be, when was Paimon blessed by Dendro and why is she as special as the Traveler? Exhibit 6, Wanderer. When we enter the deepest part of Irminsul with Scaramouche to look for something about Lumine, Scaramouche used the little godly power he had left to erase everything about himself from Irminsul, and of course, no one remembered about him anymore except for the Traveler because he's not affected by Irminsul and the ley lines. Paimon also completely forgot about his existence, which should technically mean that she is from Teyvat and that the rules of the world apply to her, but when Wanderer regains Scaramouche's memories, the past he tried to erase that Nahida saved beforehand, and spoke with his usual hideous attitude, this happened.
What did you expect? I'd never lose to that.
There's the tone of voice again. You're definitely back to your old self. Wait, but it was you inside that thing too! What have you got to be smug about?
Did Paimon forget that she was supposed to have forgotten what Scaramouche sounded like? Did she slip up? Exhibit 7, Hydro. When we got to Fontaine, things got even more suspicious. In the land of Hydro, people who own a vision, regardless of their nationality, can freely dive in the water and even breathe and talk underwater, like Ayaka and Yoimiya for example. And while it makes sense for the Traveler to be able to do that, since it's basically a walking vision, Paimon shouldn't be able to, because she doesn't wield neither the elements nor a vision, and yes, she suddenly learned to swim, but above all, she can breathe and talk underwater just like the Traveler. Then there's also the fact that Paimon grabbed Navia's drink with primordial water by mistake, saving her as a consequence, which is way too much of a coincidence if you ask me. Of course, just like in Sumeru, we were basically told that both the Traveler and Paimon have some connection to Hydro, since...
Does that mean the primordial seawater raises someone's sensitivity to Hydro when it's used on people who are not from Fontaine?
This could mean that anyone who drinks primordial seawater might get their sensitivity to the element raised, but then again, she can breathe and talk underwater like a vision holder, and the Traveler could access Furina's memories from her tears, so they had been blessed by Hydro. Exhibit 8, Natlan. In this nation, we witnessed two very important events in which Paimon's true identity may have been leaked to us. But before that, why did Paimon have a Natlan decorated foulard in her invisible bag right after we crossed the borders? We didn't even get anywhere near the Children of the Echo, and yet she already owned something from Natlan. Anyway, the first suspicious event happened when Shilonen finally forged the Traveler's ancient name. As we were going to the Children of the Echo to finally receive it, Paimon said,
Alright, time to go check on your ancient name.
I think this is self-explanatory. I mean, she slipped up there, pretty hard too. Then came Xbalanque, who, as the first Pyro Archon, realized what was going on with the Traveler and Paimon in an instant. When we got to the Temple of the Spirit where Xbalanque fought with Mawika, he said,
This is the land of the sun, created by my soul. Only the sun and those blessed by it can survive here. Me, you, and you. The sun, the other sun, Blessed One 1 and Blessed One 2.
Blessed 1-1 and Blessed 1-2 not only means that, just like in Sumeru and Fontaine, both the Traveler and Paimon were blessed by the element, it also implies that they are strictly related to one another, as if they canon as one single entity together. But above all, Paimon is actually the main entity between the two of them. Exhibit 9, Melusine. For this chapter we need to go back to Fontaine. Among these cute little creatures, the one we need to talk about is Canotila, because she sees the world in a very unique way. For example, the post-apocalyptic rendition of Teyvat after the Abyss took over it was a paradisiac place in Canotila's eyes, which makes sense considering that the Melusines were born from the interaction of Numacia-infused gears and the remains of an Abyss monster, Elenas. When it comes to the Traveler and Paimon instead, the Traveler is a monster that can swallow the whole world in a single bite, which represents his status as the Sender. While Paimon is a little rainbow balloon floating in the air, and her string seems to extend upward to somewhere above the sky itself. Now, the lore and the night told us that the elements of the human realm come from phlogiston, just like the light reflected by a prism produces a rainbow. As for the balloon floating upside down, just remember that she has an inverted triquetra on her torso, and that the vat was capsized when the Promoted One fought the second who came, so the string of this balloon would be pointing or be connected to the old world, as the mural in the domains show us. Exhibit 10. Independence. This last exhibit contains my personal opinion about something I noticed. Back in Mondstadt and Liyue, when we first started the game, Paimon never moved an inch away from the Traveler. In Sumeru instead, the Traveler left the city alone to investigate what was happening beyond the city perimeter during the Zabzerus festival, and Paimon literally lost it when she saw him suddenly disappear. Then, after Nicole spoke to us, Paimon left the Traveler to get someone to clean the room. In Natlan, Paimon first left the Traveler to record her blessing in the Pilgrim's Chronicle, and then the Traveler went with Mawika in the Night Kingdom alone to fight Gazoithoth, and Paimon once again lost it because she didn't want to be left behind to the point that she said,
What will you do without me?
Which was weird since she doesn't actively help the Traveler when he fights. In the last Lantern ride, the Traveler simply left Paimon in Liyue Harbor and went to Wuwang Hill to save Hu Tao without Paimon even realizing it, and this was actually the farthest he's ever gone from her. Lastly, in one of the emails we recently got, Paimon said that the Traveler went to pick gifts at the Ministry of Civil Affairs in Liyue, while she stayed in the harbor watching the ships coming and going, and she didn't even notice that the Traveler came back. Me from the future, that's another thing. Even in 5.4, we saw Paimon go with Shion for her session, leaving the Traveler alone with Mitsuki, and then she stayed with the Baku while the Traveler and Mitsuki kept flying around. Furthermore, it's also interesting how the Traveler had no chance to win against A when she brought him alone in the plane of Euthymia, and the second time he could only win thanks to the ambitions of the people of Inazuma that had been entrusted to him, which interestingly for the next chapter are the elements of their visions. Similarly, when Arlecchino took the Traveler alone inside, I suppose, her mindscape, he was just as powerless. What I mean to say is that the more we progress through the story, and I believe the more elements we acquire, the looser the extremely interconnected relationship between the Traveler and Paimon gets. They're not drifting apart, but I think that they simply need, like existentially need, each other less and less, slowly becoming more independent. Now that I ran out of exhibits, let's talk about my theory. I've always believed that Paimon was one of the Shades, which is one of the main theories about her, but it's clear that I changed my mind completely. I think that to really figure out who or what she is, we should simply go back to Mondstadt, considering her connection to this nation but also her crown resembling the Anemo statue. First of all, Venti was created by Astaroth, the Shade of Time, who extracted the memories and knowledge of the Primordial One from the people of Enkanomiya, turning them into Sin Shades to be sealed away, allowing the people to live on the surface now oblivious of the true genesis of the Vat. Then there's also Albedo's story quest, the main reason why I decided a long time ago to make a video about Paimon, because he proposed the idea that Paimon might be either an external organ or the one who's guiding the elements to the Traveler, and I think he was right about both theories. Paimon might be the personification of part of the Traveler's memories, and since the elements and memories are strictly connected, she might be the powers that were sealed away when he was caught by Sasti 500 years ago, which would also explain why Either, who lost his light power, is accompanied by Paimon, while Lumine, who still has it, as we can see on her dress, has no companion. Now, every time the Traveler acquires a new element, he is actually obtaining new memories that are replacing those he lost when his powers were sealed. He is slowly replacing Paimon. which would explain why the further we go into the story, the looser the relationship between the Traveler and Paimon gets. Now, remember when I said that sometimes when Paimon talks about herself in third person, it sounds like she's actually talking about someone else? Well, Paimon is a name from the Ars Goetia, and these names have been given to the gods and to the shades, but also to anyone who acquires godly powers like Mawika, so these names simply define someone's divinity. If Paimon is indeed part of the Traveler, specifically the personification of the powers he once had, then wouldn't it make sense that the real Paimon is the Traveler himself? He has a longer lifespan and can use the elements without a vision like the gods, and as a descender he has the power to change the entire world like the Heavenly Principles, so why shouldn't he have an Ars Goetia name as well? So my conclusion is that Paimon may be something like Focalor, the Traveler's divinity that has been split from his humanity. Also, to conclude on Paimon talking about herself in third person, on extremely rare occasions she actually says me, like when she asks the Traveler,
What will you do without me?
and in this case she actually meant herself for once, like the actual being that contains the Traveler's powers, not Paimon, who might be the Traveler himself. Oh, one last thing. There's something I want to show you about the Traveler that I just noticed and that I cannot unsee. A detail that has always been there, but for some reason I only noticed when we got Pyro. You might think I'm crazy, that I've lost my mind, which is entirely possible by the way, but look at his shoulder guard. Am I the only one who sees a face there? A scared, surprised or excited face with the hands on his cheeks. Of course, I see Paimon's face there because I had to see this detail the moment I decided to make a video about her, but interestingly, Paimon always floats right next to the shoulder guard, except for when we open the Paimon menu. Could it be that this is where she goes when she disappears? And that's it, I hope you liked the video. If you did, don't forget to leave a thumbs up, and if you're interested in Genshin theory videos, consider subscribing. I honestly don't know what the next video is gonna be about, but since I probably won't make one about 5.4, maybe I can finally use the time to talk about Amphorius, especially because I have a theory about the Titans, although I need to read every collectible we can find there, so it will take time. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, over and out.